G'day guys, JB here. Been a while since I posted a video, but the first round officially done and dusted, moving into the second round of the 2021 playoffs. I thought I'd go through the first round, a couple of awards announced already as well, so we'll go over them. But thought I'd go over the first round, look at each series, look at the positive for a team, a negative for the team, and again, go over those three announced awards. So in the Eastern Conference, we had Atlanta defeating New York 4-1. We had Brooklyn defeating Boston 4-1. We had Milwaukee sweeping the Heat, and we had Philadelphia beating the Wizards 4-1. One of the biggest blowouts, certainly in the Eastern Conference, in a long time. Obviously, the losing teams only winning 3 games total. That's the same as the Mavs, who won 3 against the Clippers. They were eliminated in a 7-game series, 4-3. Denver getting up over Portland 4-2. Phoenix up over the Lakers 4-2. And Utah getting it done over Memphis 4-2. We'll start off, obviously, with the Atlanta-New York series. And the Knicks were more than favoured in this one, in my opinion. You've got the highest seed. You've got the most improved player of the year in Julius Randle, who had a breakout season for sure. Tom Thibodeau comes in and severely exceeds expectations with this Knicks team. No doubt about it. Not many people had this team penciled in for more than 25 wins this year. I certainly didn't have them in playoff contention. Meanwhile, Tibbs skyrocketing them to the 4th seed of the East, and Julius Randle with the most improved award probably in the mix for an All-NBA first, second team. But it wasn't enough as the Hawks, in a gentlemanly sweep, 4-1. They won Game 1 in New York and lost Game 2 in New York. They then won their next 3, so both at home and the final in New York. Trae Young averaging a nice little rounded number of 29, 3, and 10. Desirable shooting splits, but nonetheless got it done. Meanwhile, leading the way for New York, Derrick Rose in a resurgence, a rounded 19, 4, and 5 on around 48% there. Julius Randle really undoing all of his good work in the regular season, 18, 12, and 4. Again, doesn't look too bad, but when you consider the fact he shot less than 30% as a big man and made up for 23 of the 57 team turnovers on the series, really unimpressive effort by him. Obviously, the positive for Atlanta is that as underdogs, they managed to come out of that series and they head into the second round about to taking on Philadelphia. At this point, they have snuck a game against the Sixers with an underdone Embiid. But a major positive there for the Hawks. Clearly, Nate McMillan can coach. Everyone knows Nate McMillan can coach. It was a real shock to me that he was, let's be honest, they say parted ways with Terry Stotts, but Terry Stotts was fired. And the same with Nate McMillan. Strange that they fired him from Indiana last year. He jumps on and gets this team clicking as well. Obviously a big shout out to Bogdan Bogdanovic, who was hitting big shots. Clint Capella and John Collins doing their thing as well. Really key for them, as well as Kevin Huerter off the bench. So big positive there, Atlanta moving forward. But I really think the negative at this point is that Trae Young is their big key piece at the moment. And although they have snuck Game 1 and Trae is performing, and again becomes the only player other than Michael Jordan to have 3 games on the road in 3 consecutive 30-point games on the road in Madison Square Garden. Pretty impressive feat there, I will give him that. I just don't think Trae's game is conducive to winning an NBA championship. That's the ultimate negative. I think they're going to need someone like a Collins or a Bogdanovic to really start stepping up and get closer to that 20-point per game range if they're going to be a genuine chance. Obviously, Joel Embiid being injured is another key factor, and with Embiid being injured, that can certainly change how this series looks, and Atlanta could very well sneak their way into an NBA Conference Finals. I don't see them getting past Brooklyn. I don't see anyone getting past Brooklyn, and that's East or West at this point. That's going to be a tough matchup for anyone. Positive is the fact that, they have exceeded expectations, the Hawks. They were meant to probably finish around that 7th, 8th seed, managed to sneak the 5th, and managed to sneak themselves a first-round win, so a massive positive there. Again, for the Knicks, I think their positive overall on the season is the fact that they just exceeded expectations. A team that wasn't meant to make the playoffs finishes a top 4 seed. Their coach turns them, from a 25-win team into a squad that made some serious moves throughout the year. They ended up finishing with an overall record of 41-31. So they've exceeded by at least, 20 wins in my book from what they were meant to be. finished again, a top 4 seed. Julius Randle, most improved award there as well. While I didn't have him as my most improved, certainly can see why that was made there, and worked his way into an All-NBA first team, second team position. The Knicks have a nice base to build on. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, Derrick Rose is still able to ball. You've got Burks, Barrett, and Bullock doing their thing, and a really nice rounded roster at the moment who are contributing and have built a nice chemistry. Again, the only negative is that they don't seem to have anyone other than Derrick Rose, who is a closer, and nothing against Derrick Rose. He is at times coming off the bench. He's 32 years old. He's a decade removed from his MVP form, and that is to go with all the injuries and ups and downs he's had as well. Negative, obviously, Julius Randle not able to close out, and I really think at the moment that's what New York's missing. The question is, do you go with that early? Do you want to run with New York having that closer come in, potentially shake up that chemistry? Do you bring in a veteran? Do you bring in a young guy? Obviously, Damian Lillard, there's a lot of talk around him at the moment. I don't think Dame leaves Portland. I think they're going to cater to his needs. But certainly if Damian Lillard starts moving around and there's talk about shopping him out and, New York has the availability, I wouldn't like to pair him. I wouldn't be against pairing him and Derrick Rose together with Julius Randle being their big. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't think they do it. I don't think Dame leaves Portland. I don't want to see Dame leave Portland, but I really think that's a question that New York need to ask. And it is the negative at the moment, the fact that they do not have a reliable closer. Once they get that sorted, I think they'll be fine, but there's still a lot of questions to be asked there. Obviously, Brooklyn got Boston out of the way, and the big key there, gentleman's sweep once again. Boston managed to survive in Game 3, but realistically blown out of the water. Defeated by 11 points, defeated by 22 points, defeated by 15 points, defeated by, 14 points as well. It really wasn't close. Boston just couldn't hang in, and another underperforming season for Boston, a team that prior to this had 3 conference finals in 4 years. Really looking to take that next step. Jaylen Brown, a big injury concern for them. I don't think he makes a massive difference in this series, but no Jaylen Brown, a major turning point as well. Boston just relying too much on Jason Tatum, and the Nets got it done relatively easy. Obviously, the positive for me is the fact that even with a banged-up James Harden somewhat, who's coming off injury concern, they were still able to do their job very, very nicely. And Kevin Durant is back to being the best player, or very much close to it, the best player in the NBA and certainly in the world of basketball, off an Achilles injury. Obviously, marred by some concerns with injury throughout the year, but a rounded 33-7-3, 55% from the field, 50% from deep, and over 90% from the stripe. Good luck stopping that. Brooklyn look like they're going to continue on for a little bit now without James Harden. Not sure how that goes, but the positive is that they have these guys and these players and the ability to really step up and do what they need to do. And I would really be concerned if I'm running into Brooklyn. Again, the negative, though, is no James Harden. Now, I'm not saying that that's a major negative. I feel he's one of the most overrated playoff performers and big game performers of recent time. He really hasn't showed anything for me for what he has to do, particularly considering as a front runner in Game 5. That's when he did most of his statistical damage. But, yeah, I think that is a concern. I'm not saying Kyrie and KD are going to be injured or hurt or unavailable, but they have that tendency at times to be unavailable or injured, or anything like that. So James Harden, a reliable third option for me. Him and Joe Harris can compete for that. I think on a championship team, that's where he sits. And simply due to his inefficiencies at times, his inability, or his ability to dominate the ball and just not give it up and get others involved, that's just a fact of life for me. But nonetheless, I think that's just the only concern there moving forward is the injury to James Harden and whether we can get some consistent, healthy minutes out of Durant and Irving, who are 2 of the better playoff performers of the 21st century. The last 20 years, there aren't many people that wouldn't have a Kyrie and KD on their playoff team. For Boston, I think the positive is the fact that Jason Tatum tried to make that quantum leap here. Again, we are constantly talking about whether he can or can't. I still think he will not be at that tier. I think he will be a second-level star for most of his career. Managed to pull off a 50-piece. He had 2 50-point games if you include the play-in tournament. And if you are including the play-in tournament, he's the only multiple 50-point game scorer in the history of the Boston Celtics. But it does say a lot that against this team, Jason Tatum had to average 50 just for the Celtics to get a win. And even then, it went to 125, 119. So does say a lot about what it needs. The negative, though, is the fact that I think there is a certain ceiling this Celtics team will reach, and I think they do need one more. They need a top-tier player if they're going to compete. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I think, are going to constantly run at that second-tier level. You won't get much more out of their peak and their potential. Obviously, Tatum shows it. There's no doubt about that, but he's not consistent enough with it. And again, no, Jaylen Brown was big, but at the same time, there's just, for me, always going to be a question around Jason Tatum. I don't know whether he can really make that quantum leap and step up to where he needs to be, but obviously, Boston wanting to make some moves. Danny Ainge has resigned. Whether he's resigned, stepped down, sacked, fired, I should say, has never been coming to fruition. Brad Stevens now moving to the front office. We'll see what he can do. It's going to be interesting to see who gets their coaching race as well. But for me, they need one more. They need that extra player. They need that top-tier player if they're going to compete. As I mentioned, Marcus Smart won't lose you a game. Jaylen Brown has proven he can deliver. Jason Tatum, as a second-level star, delivers. However, what he needs as a first-level star isn't there at this point. Unless he's going to bring it out really quickly, it's not going to happen. So to me, they just need that one extra star. But Brooklyn moving on with relative ease and looking like the team to beat so far. Milwaukee swept the Heat 4-0. No shock there. The bubble really seemed to inflate the way a lot of teams played, and the Heat was certainly one of those teams. Beaten by 2 in Game 1, absolutely had the pants ripped off them by 34 points in Game 2. Were beaten by 29 points in Game 3 and beat by 17 in Game 4. Positives for the Bucks are the fact that they managed to overcome that crisis. They had a nice solid spread of scoring. They got everything done that they needed to do and, again, moved on to the second round as we expected. Performed like a top 3 seed. However, the concern still is the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo can't be relied upon in crunch time to hit the bucket, and that's something I think will be and has been exposed to start round 2 as well. The Bucks down 2-0 on the Nets, who are cruising very nicely, and again, the big issue there is the fact that Giannis he's that guy, but he's not the guy. So again, Chris Middleton's going to need to step up. Drew Holiday had a very nice series and had a very nice season as well, but he's going to need to step up in that second round. Ultimately, the undoing is going to be the fact that Giannis is now going to be relied upon to guard KD. That's a big task in and of itself. There's very limited number of people, I think, through history that could guard Kevin Durant, and certainly very few who are willing to step up and guard Kevin Durant. But again, Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, they're going to be key in the second round here for the Bucks. Giannis, again, going to be key. Can't have him go out on his sword. This is a guy with 2 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, building a resume, on that top 50 trajectory and certainly close to that top 50 trajectory as far as resume is concerned. But again, it's those playoff shortcomings that, we criticise a lot of players for. James Harden's, Russell Westbrook's. Giannis really starting to fall into that category now, and if he doesn't really start making a play, will probably be stuck in that category for a lot of his career. For the Heat, very hard to find a positive, I must say. The only positive I can find is the fact that Jimmy Butler really pushed in the regular season to get them to where they needed to be. If it wasn't for Jimmy Butler, this team would be well and truly out of the thoughts of most people. Negatives, though, was the fact they just simply underperformed, and I think they were overinflated now after their bubble run. Having spoken to a few different Heat people and a few different basketball people, they really felt the Miami Heat were, starting that run last year, where they looked like they were a solid side, might be a first and second round team for a couple of years, but, by year 3, year 4, having this roster and having it built out and everyone getting towards the end of their contract, a genuine NBA Finals contender, genuine NBA championship contender, running to the end of Jimmy Butler's career there, potentially capping all of that off. But Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn have taken massive steps backwards. Not Kendrick Nunn, I must say. He's probably about the only person that tried to maintain his level. But Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero really capping out. It's just a really big problem there. I mean, they're back in that position now that they were essentially 12 months ago. They're 2 seasons into what could have been a 4-year build, but that 4-year build to me has to start again. Bam Adebayo really underperforming as well. I mean, Jimmy Butler can only do so much in the regular season. There's no doubt about that. Goran Dragic, still a veteran, still trying to do his thing, but at the end of the day, you've got these 3 young guys who could be the foundation of the franchise and really trying to build something out of this team, and they've just started to really fall back once again. So for me, Miami really have to look and see, okay, do we go one more year and try and, blow everything up? Pat Riley knows what to do. There's a reason Pat Riley's one of the three, or certainly one of the three. He's on the Mount Rushmore of off-court NBA careers, coach, executive, you name it, he's done it. I just struggle to see what they're going to do. Jimmy Butler's 31. You look at Goran Dragic, he's 34. He had a career playoff run last year, but again, is that a bubble effect? We don't know. He was arguably Miami's best player in this series as well. So, yeah, I think the bubble certainly exposed them. And again, we've now had 2 full seasons. We would have thought by, this year, okay, genuine second-round team, getting towards, conference finals, NBA finals next year, but we just don't see that happening. I think they're back to square one. I think they're going to have to really look at what they're going to do with their roster. So, again, the Bucks get through in a sweep. No surprise there. Miami outperformed themselves last year, clearly exposed this year. It's going to be a lot of questions asked and a lot of questions that need to be answered there. Philadelphia, again, a gentlemanly sweep over the Wizards. They dropped game 4 to have the Wizards stay alive, but managed to really look after this one pretty well. 1 by 7, 1 by 25. They also won by 29 and then proceeded to win by 17. Nothing's close here in this series. Tobias Harris really leading the way. Joel Embiid leading the way. Ben Simmons, Seth Curry doing their thing. Their 4 lead players doing what needed to be done, no doubt about that. Meanwhile, for the Wizards, Bradley Beal putting up a 30-piece. Russell Westbrook chasing the numbers inefficiently once again. Then you've got Hashimura and Gafford. I got nothing against them, but Rui Hashimura at this stage, viable third option, but at the same time, he shouldn't be, at times relied to be your first option. And Gafford, I think he shocked a lot of people on the way his season's played, but I think that also speaks volumes to how this Wizards team is looking. Obviously, the positive for Philadelphia, got out of the first round. However, the negative there is the fact that Joel Embiid has a slight meniscus tear, is listed day-to-day, could be a genuine concern. And again, they're already down 0-1 to the Hawks. 7-game series, not really worried about that. However, it is concerning to know that Embiid is injured. And realistically, the fate of this franchise relies on Joel Embiid. If Embiid isn't healthy and Embiid doesn't perform, then there's a genuine chance the Atlanta Hawks go to the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. That will be a big drama for the league, particularly knowing that it looks like the Nets are going to come out in their series. They're already up 0-2 they're already up 2-0 on the Bucks, and I do not have any hope whatsoever of Atlanta getting a game there on the Nets. So honestly, again, it relies on Joel Embiid. This is a 26-year-old. He's got a slight meniscus tear, lateral meniscus tear. Ben Simmons can't hit a jump shot, and Seth Curry, 3rd or 4th option, great, but you can't be relying upon Seth Curry to be going for 30 to try and win you basketball games. At the end of the day, that's just not going to happen. He's not Steph, and that's the big difference there. Steph can have 30 and win you a basketball game. Steph, to me, is a top 50, top 40 player of all time. Seth's not even the best baller in his own family, mother, father, brother, all that sort of stuff. So, I've got no doubt Ben Simmons' defense, Danny Green can step up defensively. Matisse Thybulle's reliable defensively. I think they've got that down pat, but they really need to rest all their hopes on Joel Embiid, and if he's not healthy, could produce issues. For Washington, the positive is the fact that Bradley Beal continued to try and be Bradley Beal, Rui Hashimura stepping up, and Daniel Gafford doing his thing. There's no doubt about it, but the negative at the end of the day is the offense of Russell Westbrook, and it has always been the issue with most teams. He has been a primary or secondary option on. I think Russ at this point needs to bag his offense, needs to quote unquote bag at Michael, but he needs to get rid of this idea that he is a lethal scorer. Yes, he has won a scoring title. I believe he has 2 scoring titles, but that does not make him a lethal scorer. He's not Kobe Bryant. He's not Michael Jordan. He's not Kevin Durant. And his offensive bag isn't even that of Allen Iverson. Now, Iverson had 4 scoring titles. Durant had 4 scoring titles. Russell Westbrook has the same amount of scoring titles as Kobe Bryant. He's not the same zip code as a scorer. Great athlete, no doubt about it. Can hustle on the boards, no doubt about it. I think he's a genuine passer when he wants to distribute the ball. But his offensive skill set is so limited if it's not at the rim, it's very much in trouble. He struggles at the foul line. He struggles from deep. Struggles on the jump shot in general. If he's getting to the rim, there's no doubt about it. I think if Russell Westbrook was 6'8", he would be like LeBron James. He wouldn't have to hide his struggles from the mid-range and from deep. He would be able to just get to the line at will. And then you're looking at a guy who's averaging 28, 29 points per game. You can understand that, but it's not happening. And I think Russell Westbrook just needs to settle that down. The guy's 33 next season. He needs to look at the idea that maybe he, I don't care about the triple-doubles. I mean, but if he wants to go out, be that guy who takes, 10, 12 shots a game like a Jason Kidd, worries about rebounding, worries about distributing, gets your Hashimuras, your Bills, and your Bertans involved, I think Washington can continue to push towards a 7th, 8th seed and be a bit more of a concern. But until that happens, there's going to be some real issues there. Positive, yeah, Bradley Beal and everyone else chipping in, but I mean, the Wizards exceeded my expectations. I thought they were going to be disappointing. They weren't as disappointing as I thought, but they did go out in a whimper, and I think that's something that can be addressed if you simply change the role of Russell Westbrook. As we go over to Denver and Portland, Denver getting the win 4-2 on the series. They head into the second round, 3rd seed beating a 6th seed. And this one was a back-and-forth series. The only team to take back-to-back games was Denver. Trailing 1-0, they went 2-1. Portland tied the series at 2-2, and then Denver went back-to-back to win it. In their games, they won. They won pretty handily, mind you. Our closest game was 5 points. That was game 3. Damian Lillard with 37 there. But Denver just getting done what they needed to do. And ultimately, it come down to the fact that, Portland aren't a great defensive team, and when Damian Lillard gets hot, the rest of the team doesn't see the ball, but they get very cold as well. Positives for Denver, again, they get through. They did what they needed to do. They do run into the second round, and that means in the Western Conference that we will see a team win their first NBA championship, and we will see the top 4 seeded teams get through to the second round. Nikola Jokic continuing to do his thing. Michael Porter Jr. was my most improved player of the year. He was getting things done. That's what he needed to do. And the right guys stepped up as they needed to. There's no doubt about that. There's a positive there in the fact that, again, the right guys stepped up when they needed to. The MVP of the league led the way as their best player. As a 3 seed, that's what you need. You need to get into the second round. They are now down at the time of recording this video 1-0 to the Phoenix Suns. However, again, the positive there, Denver getting out of the first round as a 3 seed, as the favourite, getting it done. And again, outside of Damian Lillard really holding that team and controlling the fact that, Portland had one of the worst defences in the league this year. The negative, however, is they have a tendency to go away from the hot hand, and it has nearly cost them in games. And I think the big thing for Denver going forward is, again, recognise that hot hand, stick with it. I don't care if it runs dry, but, you go to the well as many times as you can. Michael Porter Jr. in Game 6 had 22 of their first 27, finished with 26, and those 3 possessions after his 26 points, after his 22 points, got Portland back in the game. And again, I really just feel if you're going to ride the hot hand, particularly in a closeout series, you have to send a message that you aren't mucking around. And unfortunately for Denver, when they go up against a Phoenix Suns, when Phoenix see someone with a hot hand, they run with a hot hand. And they're going to continue to capitalise and push them as well. I think they do have a size advantage on Phoenix. However, it is going to be the fact that they're going to need to defend the hot hand. It showed in Game 1 of their second round matchup with the Suns. That's why the Suns got the win. And the fact that there are going to be bigger bodies, such like an Ayton, that are going to go minute for minute with a Jokic and really try to nullify and wash out that matchup. So, again, you're going to need to recognise the hot hand. They're going to need to avoid pick and roll offense because they can't guard it. Jokic just can't guard the pick and roll. He's terrible at it. But if they can recognise their hot hand, they can play the game on their terms. This is a team I really can't sit there and say can't win it for the simple fact they were down 3-1 twice last year in the bubble, got it done. And Nikola Jokic managed to come out and back that form up with an MVP season. So I can't rule them out. And, they're a top 3 team in the West for a reason. But at the same time, there are some issues there to deal with. Positives for Portland, obviously Damian Lillard continuing to ball out, do what he needs to do. But other than that, there's really not much going on. A couple of respectable efforts from his assisting teammates. But at the same time, your big issue there is your defense and the fact that you now need to start catering to Damian Lillard. Lillard's been with his squad close to 10 seasons now, to be his 10th season in the league next year. Has won Western Conference final berth, has proven that he loves his offensive game, has proven that he doesn't mind doing a bit when he needs to. But ultimately the big issue is that you need to get a team built around Damian Lillard, and you need to do it quick. He's 30 years old. There are teams that are going to be begging for him if the team can't build around him. And this is it for Portland. I think the next 2 to 3 years is going to be the window for Portland, because if Dallas start building around Luka Doncic, If the Clippers put it together, if Devin Booker can continue to do what he's doing, and if Denver somehow keep pulling things out, it's going to be an issue for Portland to try and get up the standings and get things done. Who knows what the Lakers can do? They're a time bomb in of themselves. But for me, the Blazers really need to get on a bicycle. They need to ride and they need to start getting things sorted. Defensively, that's one thing. They've got rid of Coach Terry Stotts. Who they bring in as a coach, I don't know, but it needs to be someone that's going to cater to Damian Lillard. Again, this player empowerment, I don't like to agree with it. But at the end of the day, you've got a guy who's committed himself twice to the franchise over a 10-year span. I think at this point, you start paying him back. Get some defence around him. Get another good second option. CJ McCollum can do it. That's great. But they need a big who is going to be reliable to score as well. Most of the great tandems in league history have been big, small tandems. There's a reason for that. The dynamic it creates on the floor is very hard to stop. It'll be interesting to see what the Blazers do. Out in the first round, no coach now, so they're going to need to look for someone else. But they need to start catering for Damian Lillard, that's for sure. Clippers get it done over the Mavs in a 7-game series, a somewhat blowout 7-game series. The Clippers come from 0-2 down. The Mavs took the first 2 games. Clippers took the next 2. Mavs get a 3-2 lead, and then the Clippers go back-to-back to seal it. Positive for the Clippers is they managed to actually get out of a Game 7, despite some of the indiscrepancies from some of their players, but the big positive there is Kawhi Leonard, outside of Game 6 and Game 7 last year, was clearly their best player until they managed to go down to the Nuggets. But he really put a stamp on this series. Around 32, 8 and 5, 2 steals and a block on 61% from the field. Absolutely crazy numbers, and Kawhi Leonard proving why he's one of the best playoff performers of the 21st century. The reason why he has back-to-back, the reason why he has 2 finals MVPs, the reason he has 2 defensive players of the year, just doing everything that he knows he can do and everything he can. Obviously, there are some questions around the Clippers. Can they continue it on? This, playoff P has been a thing, PG, 13%, you name it. However, Paul George has shown previously that he can get things done and get teams to where they need to be. There's no doubt about it. But he needs to prove that in a Clipper uniform. There's no doubt about it. So does Kawhi. But there's plenty of reasons to like this Clippers side. They're reasonably well-rounded. They've got a reliable playoff performer. And it's just a matter of getting it done. I don't know how well they get it done, but it's just a matter of getting it done. For Dallas, obviously the positive, Luka Doncic, through his first 13 games, is averaging 33.5 points per game in the playoffs. Went absolutely batshit crazy. Excuse the language in this series, around 36, 8 and 10, suffered hard in the second half of Game 7 and ultimately was probably the only flaw in his game throughout this series. He does struggle defensively, but that is an effort thing. Struggled at the line as well. That is another big thing as well. But 40 minutes, around 36, 8 and 10. And what they need to do in Dallas is they need to get him a reliable second option. They're stuck with Porzingis on a contract. Keep Tim Hardaway as a third option, but get a legitimate second option. Get the ball out of Luka's hands, and Dallas could be in some real trouble there. Dirk Nowitzki has come out and praised him as the greatest Mav of all time. I think that is very, very premature. Dirk, one of the 20 greatest players in league history from my book, but that's the sort of praise you're getting from the franchise's greatest player, and you're hearing everyone say that Mark Cuban needs to do something. I think that's more than handy. I'm not saying Luka needs to get out of Dallas. I wouldn't want to see Luka get out of Dallas. I think he can build a legacy similarly to a Dirk Nowitzki. He's clearly got that kit bag there. He's clearly got the skills, and he's not afraid of the big stage, but they need to get something done very quick in Dallas. Porzingis with one of the worst playoff performances for a guy getting paid as much as he has. Well, probably the worst playoff performance for someone getting paid as much as he has in history. He's just become unreliable. He's always injured. You want to talk about playoff P. Kristaps Porzingis being the new playoff P. If they can get Tim Hardaway to the third option, if they can keep him in, if they can realistically get a good piece around Luka Doncic and move Hardaway and Porzingis around to the point where they are your second and third, where they are your second string players, then you're not doing too bad. However, they are struggling to do that at the moment. And that's the ultimate test, really, for Dallas. Can they get another piece around Luka? Can they avoid him moving out? Let's see what can happen. But through 13 games, now the qualification is 25, but through 13 games, 33.5 points per game. Had he played 25 games, he would be the all-time career leader in playoff points per game, passing Michael Jordan by 0.1 points per game. You don't do that if you can't play. I know it's only 13 games, but Dallas really have a star on their hands. We're talking about a generational talent here in Luka. Let's see what they can do. But that's what they're going to need to do. They're going to need to get a genuine second option to Luka. You move Hardaway and Porzingis as your second string offensive lead, and then I think it's just an open book from there, realistically. So let's see what they can do. It's going to take a little bit, but I think it can happen, that's for sure. The Los Angeles Lakers went down to the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix getting up over the line. 2 years ago, had the second worst record in the league, and now they're sitting 1-0 up in the second round on the verge of a conference finals berth. Phoenix got game 1, lost games 2 and 3, and then proceeded to win 3 straight against the Lakers. They won their games by 9 points, 8 points, 30 points, and 13 points. Things not really close. Devin Booker with the second most points ever in a closeout game versus the defending champs. Only Bob Pettit in Game 6 of the 1958 NBA Finals has more closeout points in the series versus the defending champs, and obviously Pettit did it in the finals. But a massive tick in the box for Phoenix. They were the underdogs in this series. Positives there, obviously Devin Booker really controlled the game on his terms as well. 29 or rounded 36 and 5 on nice shooting splits there. DeAndre Ayton has been performing. Chris Paul performing when he needs to. Had some big fourth quarters. Cameron Payne getting it done, and Jay Crowder massive in the last 3 games. But the big question I do have on this Phoenix team is, can their young, inexperienced team, can they hold themselves together? Can DeAndre Ayton keep it up? Can Jay Crowder keep it up? And, Chris Paul's 34, 35 years of age. He needs to be able to keep it up as well. We're going to need to see more out of him as well. Being your 6th offensive option as arguably the team's second best player, certainly not acceptable even at his age, but he has brought a tremendous amount of leadership. So again, I think for Phoenix, it's a matter of keeping it up. Can they do it? That's the question. They're up 1-0 in the second round. They're on the verge of a conference finals. Don't doubt Denver, though. They have come back from series and won it before, so I am holding my breath there. That could be a 7-game series. We'll see what happens. But they've certainly got a tool bag that they can use and use a lot. The skill set of Booker. DeAndre Ayton's continuing to develop and provide for himself there. Cameron Payne off the bench, proving to be a viable 6th option. Jay Crowder, he managed to get a real kick in the backside following the clowning by LeBron James in Game 3 of their series. So let's see what can happen there. Again, I think Phoenix has the depth and the potential to be one of the biggest turnarounds in league history, to potentially go from, in 2 seasons, the second worst record in the league to a conference final and potentially an NBA final. So again, I think it's going to be the consistency for Phoenix. It's going to be a matter of the young guys controlling the ball, controlling possession, and converting when it matters. They showed it in Series 1. Can they do it in Series 2? For the Lakers, it was, everything that could go did go wrong. After Game 3, they really threw in the towel. An injury to Anthony Davis, who for me was their best player throughout the playoffs, even the playing games. Injury is a curse, and I know they talk about you've got to be fit and got to be on the floor, but at the end of the day, the fate of the Lakers over the last 2 seasons has rode with Anthony Davis, and it happened once again. LeBron James in one of the 3 worst playoff series of his career. The numbers don't really do justice to the film. No energy, no effort, really lost interest. Credit to LeBron. He's managed to survive these first rounds throughout his career, but this was the best first-round team he ever faced, and they went down as well. Dennis Schroeder tried to pick up towards the end of that series. You had, even though he's not as high on the stat sheet there, Wes Matthews trying to pick up in Game 6. Just couldn't do it, and ultimately the Lakers, as favourites, go down in this series. I think the positive there is the fact that they do have pieces that can perform. You have a Caldwell Pope who's proven he can perform. You've got a Wes Matthews who proved he can perform. You've got Schroeder who proved he could perform. However, the negatives there is the fact that Harrell signed as a massive piece, didn't play big minutes. Andre Drummond didn't perform at the level they wanted him to perform. Kyle Kuzma didn't perform at the level they wanted him to perform. Alex Caruso getting bigger minutes than he deserved. A lot of issues here for the Lakers. Injuries, one of them. Age, one of them. What do the Lakers do? I don't know. LeBron James, 1 year left on his contract. Can Anthony Davis get healthy? What are they going to do with Dennis Schroeder? What are they going to do with Kyle Kuzma? Marc Gasol's nearly out of the league at this point, I think. Montrezl Harrell, 6th man of the year, struggled to get on the floor. A lot of concerns here for the Lakers. Obviously, LeBron has 1 more year. I don't see him staying in the Lakers after that. He's going to want to try and stay in the league to play with Bronny. I really feel that's a case. I just don't know whether it's going to happen. A lot of concerns for the Lakers, in my opinion. Obviously, next year is a thing. We'll see what happens there. But LeBron's going to be 37 at the end of it. If Anthony Davis doesn't stay healthy, they're going to be an issue, and you'd have to say that it's a fail as far as the Lakers are concerned. I mean, really, the only two superstars to never deliver a back-to-back for the Lakers were Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. LeBron and AD really could look at this situation and be in that book as well. The Lakers are a title town. Winning is the Lakers' thing. It's as simple as that. And if they're not going to win and they're not going to perform, then, I mean, you've got to start blowing it up as well. Look for a massive roster shake-up. LeBron does this in the back end of most of his contracts. I don't feel like that's not going to happen again. They don't think Schroeder's going to get a contract. People begged for Drummond. He didn't perform where they thought he would. Again, he's a reliable second, third option, but he's also got to see the ball as well. You can't take away from having other people on the glass. A lot of questions here for the Lakers. They had the personnel, there's no doubt about it. They weren't healthy. They didn't get it done. What happens next year, I don't know. But, LeBron's going to be due for a massive extension, and he's never going to earn this sort of money again. Where he goes, I don't know. Do you run the risk of a 37-year-old LeBron breaking down and paying him big money? I mean, he has to, at this point to me, sign 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts. You're not going to get big 4-year deals out of him. Anthony Davis, closing in on 30 over the next couple of years. If he doesn't get his body right, he could be very well done at an early age. Again, I do think Anthony Davis, when he's on the court, when he's healthy, the best player on the Lakers and arguably the best player in the league. But again, you've got to consider that health. Schroeder, capable player, there's no doubt about it. You've got to understand he's a six-man for a reason and performs as a six-man as a reason. A lot of questions to be asked here for the Lakers. Don't be surprised if we see a big shake-up there. I don't see much happening in the off-season for them. But they're going to need to look at bringing in a player and potentially moving LeBron as a genuine second option here, not just as a guy who can flow through, a genuine second option. At the same time, I don't want to see LeBron go to the bench. At the end of the day, he's built up, he's one of the 5 players with 4 league MVPs. And no one wanted to see Michael, Russell, Kareem, or Wilt come off the bench. So I don't want to see LeBron in that case either. If he can't contribute, I don't see him in the league. If he can't contribute as a starter, that is, I don't see him in the league. So, again, he's probably got another 1-2 years as a genuine starter, but once injuries start catching up like they have been, it's going to be a real concern. But, yeah, the Lakers with some soul-searching in the off-season, it's all going to come down to health, and the Suns having a really good run there. They're now 1-0 up in their Western Conference battle. Final series was a gentleman's sweep, once again for the Utah Jazz, getting it done 4-1 over the Grizzlies. Grizzlies getting the first game, but games 2, 3, 4, and 5 to the Jazz. They won by 12, 10, 7, and 16. Pretty easy series for them. Memphis getting through the play-in, there's no doubt about that. Ja Morant with a nice big start, as well as Dylan Brooks, 2 guys who have really led that team. Jonas Valanciunas, again, one of the better players. And Jaren Jackson coming back from an injury for Memphis, getting it done. For them, positives for Memphis is the fact that they do have some solid building blocks here. Jaren Jackson coming back into this lineup will make them a better team next year. I just wonder whether they need that extra piece. Ja Morant still need to give him another season. He was injury plagued as well. And once I think they can get that constant flow of players through their team, see how Ja stands over the next couple of years as a first option, and I think you make a decision from there. Jonas Valanciunas started to step up. Dylan Brooks stepped up in a big way. We know how Jaren Jackson Jr. can play. Kyle Anderson as well. So there's plenty to like about this Memphis team. Again, they come in underdone. They certainly were an 8th seed. They were a team that battled to get to the 8th seed, though. We'll see how they go. They had to win back-to-back. They had to win 2 games to get into the tournament itself. So I think a credit to them is the fact that they won 3 games overall on their run, even into the first round. So a lot of positives there. Can't really name a negative. The negative is they probably at this point are still a little young. You can't help age, but there's still some growth to go. And I think with Jaren Jackson back in the side next year, that will make a difference. Positives, obviously, for Utah. Got it done a gentlemanly sweep. Donovan Mitchell back without a solid ankle concern. Jordan Clarkson producing off the bench. My 6th man of the year. Won the award. Pretty simple there. Rudy Gobert playing some good defense as well. Probably in line for Defensive Player of the Year. And overall, the Jazz getting done what they need to do. But I do question whether they can be consistent enough and whether they can perform down the stretch against better teams. It has been the concern that everyone has had. And they're going up against the Clippers. So their defense is going to be really, really stretched. And I wouldn't be surprised whether the negative is the fact that they're going to draw Gobert out of the lane. He can't just be a rim protector. He's going to need to be out on the perimeter and really guarding players in this series. Again, 6 double-digit scorers in this series, all 5 starters in double-digit scoring, bar Joe Ingles, who only started 1 game. But yeah, I think the real question is, can they be consistent? Can they stay healthy? And can they guard Kawhi and Paul George? That's a lot tougher ask than Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Ja Morant, and Jaren Jackson Jr. We'll see what they can do, see how they can perform. Big questions, and a lot of answers needed there for Utah. So Donovan Mitchell, again, proving that he can perform and get it done. Bojan Bogdanovic is a known playoff performer. Mike Conley's a veteran. Rudy Gobert, about to probably be a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Joe Ingles has done it in the playoffs before. We know they can do it, but whether they can do it's another question. Utah finished with the number 1 record in the league. So realistically, when you've probably got the Defensive Player of the Year, when you've got an All-NBA teamer in Donovan Mitchell, when you've got a 6-man in Joe Ingles, when you've got that veteran experience and that ability in the playoffs that the Jazz do, you have to circle it as, okay, it's a tough series, but it's a winnable series. So let's see what they can do. I just think the negative is the fact that Gobert is going to let them down. He's going to be Defensive Player of the Year, but getting to the rim isn't going to be the issue for the Clippers, for the Jazz. Oh, the Clippers aren't going to have an issue getting to the rim. The issue is going to be the Jazz stepping out on that perimeter and that mid-range of Kawhi Leonard. So we'll see what happens. I think Kawhi is the X-factor in that series. We'll see how they go. But Utah, big positive, number 1 seed, managed to get the gentlemanly sweep. You'd expect most series to go a minimum of 5 games. A fourth obviously is there, but 5 games for the Jazz, that's acceptable. It was a tight loss against them in Game 1. Pretty much got the job done comfortably across the other 4 games. Ticking the box there, but big test game is their Round 2 series against the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard. So can they do it? I don't know. They don't really have a direct matchup for him. Rudy Gobert, their best defender, but he's going to be drawn out from the rim. So don't be surprised if the Clippers take that one there. It's going to be very interesting to see how that performs there as well. Anyway, guys, that's been me and my series, my Round 1 wrap. Hit like on the video, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts on the first round. Let me know how you think the second round is going to go. Follow me on Twitter, Justin_G_Bryan. Like the Facebook page, JB's NBA. Obviously, you're here on my YouTube, but you can also head over to my other YouTube channel, JB's Highlights and Mixtapes, where I'm slowly catching up on the regular season and hoping to get as many highlights out of the first round as I can very shortly. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.